And pleased to be joined now on Coach's Corner by head girls track coach Dean Clasen. Coach, thank you for joining me.
Oh, good to be back.
Quite a bit to talk about here. The season winding down. Let's go back to conference, where I think you really kind of got an idea, not just of where the girls stood in the conference, but kind of where they were standing as far as the season went. And it was, from Humboldt's standpoint, I thought fairly impressive.
We had a very good conference meet. Earlier in the season we didn't have all of our people, and I keep forgetting that. We had injuries to start with, and we had some illness and so on. And by the time we got to conference, we were probably as healthy as we had been for most of the season. There's a few girls that were still a little bit dinged up, but they were real troopers with the way that they competed. But the biggest thing was every year we go into the conference, going into the season with the conference as one of our focuses, and with the conference, when that competition's on the line, usually I think that we should be probably, at least in the 5 or 6 range. I like to think that year in and year out we should be able to compete at that level. And going in this year, I really wasn't sure. I thought that there's a whole bunch of teams that could be in that 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th spot, and things would shake out a lot differently than they did. But we had an excellent night. Paige probably didn't run as well as she had in all the other seasons, or all the other races through the seasons, but this particular night everyone else ran very, very well. We had a huge number of season's best. We ended up placing in 17 of the 19 events, and up until that time I couldn't remember a time in my coaching career when we'd done that. It's usually we had an overload of distance runners, or we were great in some of the field events, but we would have holes somewhere in the lineup, and that wasn't the case the other night. We did a great job and had some very, very good performances from the girls, and as I said, a lot of season's best. The 4x8 in particular dropped from 11 minutes to 10:38, so we had a whole bunch of half-milers that went from 2:45 down to 2:38, and opened some eyes for some of the other coaches, and of course that kind of set things up for regional. But again, we can start naming people, but
right.
The list would go on and on and
right.
on, because so many of them ran so terribly well.
Regionals is an interesting animal in that, at least from the fan standpoint, the focus tends to be on how many individuals advance on to state. And the team standings almost become secondary, whereas for you, the team really stepped up and had a great meet, but you didn't necessarily see that reflected in how many moved on to the state competition.
That's exactly right, because if we were to tell other coaches that we only had one event advance and we were 3rd in our region, people would just be scratching their head trying to figure out how that could happen.
Right.
But it was a replay of Tuesday night where the girls did an absolute excellent job of going out and making sure that they ran as hard as they can, or competed whatever event it was, whether it was the jumps or the throws or the sprints, or everybody's competing as hard as they had. Now, having said that, we had some mistakes. We had some people that took off early in relays and those types of things, but they were type of errors that, as I talked to Phil in the paper, that were kids being aggressive. It wasn't just not paying attention. It wasn't a matter of not practicing or anything, because we watched the kids and we'd worked with them and so on, but they just got a little jumpy and trying to do a little bit more than what they needed to. And despite all of some of those glitches that we had, we still had a whole slew of season's best at that night. It was a beautiful night to run, and it was great to see Paige come back after a frustrating Tuesday night, and then she won the 3,000 somewhat easily, going away. Ran 11:20, which at that time was her 2nd fastest time. But we also had Heidi Christopher in the long jump, ends up going 14:11, and I think 14:2 was her best. She spent most of the season in the 13 to 12 foot range, just a real struggle, and yet she came through. Our 4x8 ran another 10:39. We thought maybe we could get that down around 10:30, and that wouldn't have been enough to go to the state meet, but it was one of those things where it would be a huge improvement. But again, girls went out a little bit too fast in the first lap and paid the price the last 200 meters, but again, it wasn't for lack of effort. Our 4x1 was the fastest time of the season, and that was Becca and Kinsey and Cassandra and Caitlin, and those girls were very close to qualifying. I think 52:01 or 52:02 or something like that went, and we ran it was 52.3, and then we ran a 53 with the addition of the .24 for the fully automatically timing allotment, so we were just over 53. So we were, just, I don't know, just right where we needed to be in a lot of different things. We double placed with Kinsey and Cassandra in the 400 hurdles. Caitlin did well in the 100-meter dash, and again we start talking about individuals and we forget about other ones. Trinity Wattenham had a huge week, great meet. She ended up her track career running as well as she ever had. She just looked great in the hurdles, ran a 16:94, which is by far her fastest race in a couple of years. So it was great. It was just so much fun to watch. But we told the girls going in that what we wanted to do was we told them that for us to qualify events was a long shot in a lot of cases, but we were going to see what we could do. And then the secondary thing that we want to do is to make sure we're running season's best, so that if we did qualify, it was one of those things that we could walk away and say we did our very, very best. And the fact that we finished third in that meet was just very, very surprising. And as I went back, we had scored in all 19 events, and I don't know that I've ever had that happen. And again, third through six, with the one first place finish, everything else was third through six, and it just shows the diversity of the type of athletes that we have. We've got some sprinters, we've got some distance kids, we've got a lot of youth, we've got some throws. The jumps did well. Like I said, we scored in everything, and that's what we've been trying to get across to the girls, is that everybody can contribute, and that's why it's a team sport.